I'm going to share something. It's a secret, okay? But
Sure.
one day I received a call and said, Jeffrey wants to meet you tomorrow at the Four Seasons having in LA, in Beverly Hills, having breakfast. And it's his birthday, by the way. And I went there. Happy birthday, Jeffrey. What do you, 7 o'clock a.m., you know? Jeffrey always had these very early meetings. I want to propose you to direct El Dorado because, you know, no longer we have Wilfin. And wrong question, you know, I said, you may gain a bad director and lose a very decent character designer, you know?
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining again. It was good last time to chat about The Corpse Bride and a little bit about Hotel Transylvania.
Mm.
And now we're here to talk about DreamWorks' second second traditional animation, but third release, The Road to El Dorado, starring Kevin Kline and
Kenneth Branagh.
Kenneth Branagh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember when it came out. I'll just give you a little bit of overview of my
Please.
perception, then I'll ask you about your role. I remember when I saw the trailer, it was interesting. I mean, I was, attracted to it, but I think what sort of fell through with the film for me personally was it was trying to find an audience in young people and older people.
Mm-hmm.
With the humor in older people and animation in the younger people was too cartoony, which was fine by me. I mean, there's some of the sequences were beautiful, especially the waterfall and a whole bunch of other stuff. But overall, still, it was a pretty good film. I saw it just last week again. It was
Mm-hmm.
better now than I probably saw it back then. I'm almost 24 years ago. But yeah, that's just my thinking of it. Tell me about your involvement and all that stuff. It's been 24 years. Yeah, it came out in 2000.
It's true. It's one of the films I enjoy it a lot because, um, believe it or not, that film started pre-production in 1996. We were working on Prince of Egypt, and there was a small crew with Fred Waterman and Nicola Marley, my good friend and great character designer, working on it. And we didn't know that it was going to happen because it was for a while, for 2 or 3 long years in pre-production, really early
Mm-hmm.
on, actually without any director involved, at that time, until Jeffrey Katzenberg and I guess Spielberg decided, okay, we are going to do it. And then Will Finn from Disney, that phenomenal animator and storyboard artist and director, came in, and David Silverman from The Simpsons joined it. And I was asked by Bonnie Radford, which was one of the producers, hey, you are a Spaniard. You are Spanish. Do you want to work on El Dorado? And I remember saying, oh, I don't want to remind that time, where Spaniards were there with the sword and then the cross in the other hand, just pretending to colonize and just looking for the goal, So, but she said, better than you, that you can bring the information from your country and search in your country those days, from Hernan Cortés and Pizarro and all these greats at that time conquerors, now and at the time we were working on El Dorado, I already thought was a genocide. You know what I'm saying? So it was hard for me to say yes. But obviously, when they green lighted, finally, I'm talking about 1997, something like just right, or early 1998, when The Prince of Egypt came out. I
Prince
said
of
yes.
Egypt came out in December 1998, so it was
98.
probably
Yeah. So so
yeah.
so early 1998, we were asked to, hey, do you really want to work on Shrek or El Dorado? And I said, I go to El Dorado. And my friend Carter Goodrich went to Shrek, the great illustrator and designer. And then we joined that crew, which it was Nicola Marley, and then a very young, great designer called Tony Ciruno. So we were the three main designers working on it for at least 2 years. from the green light. And I remember they brought Conrad, Didier Conrad from France, who is actually making the comic strips of Asterix nowadays, doing like kind of Uderzo style. And Didier was fun to work. James Baxter helped on the designs, but they never went there or with Didier's Conrad's designs. They stick more with Nicolas Marlet and my designs for the 2 years that we finalized those characters. And I tell you why it was fun for me, because it's cartoony. And this is what I love. I love cartoons, you know. I love Hotel T, I love Chorus Bride, I love El Dorado, even Madagascar or Kung Fu Panda, How to Train Your... I like cartoons. I like to make cartoons. I don't do well on realistic stuff, even if I work on Spirit or Prince of Egypt, but it's harder for me, way harder, you know. So I like something, and El Dorado had that comedy touch, but I think Katzenberg was very ambitious. He wanted the adults and the kids to be all liking it, and that's what you pointed. You work for one or you work for the others. When you try to put the net and catch all the audiences and all the audience, it doesn't seem to work for me, you know? So the gags and the sketches were a bit sassy, was a bit for adults, you know? I don't want to go into sex reference, but Tulio and Miguel were the big guys, kind of very macho, kind of always making jokes with the natives and Shell. And on the film, there is a point that they are talking about pesetas, like the currency, and at that time there were doblons and escudos, you know. So there is that mistake. Pesetas came in on the 19th century in Spain. No? There are some mistakes, big mistakes. I don't know if they were the writers. I worked first with Ted Elliott as a writer and Terry Rossio. Hans Zimmer was there many times. I met Hans from The Prince of Egypt, but was one of the usual suspects. We started working with Will Finn and David Silverman. I had a great time with these two directors. Both, they were replaced by Don Paul and Vivo, and I did well with the other two. Believe me, I swear to God. From one day to another, we hear that David Silverman is going to go, and actually, it wasn't at the studio already. You know, I don't know what happened. It was replaced. David was a very funny guy and with lots of gags. Really, exactly coming from The Simpsons. You know, really cool things, and Will Finn was actually a very funny and decent man, and really trying to please Jeffrey too, which is a very narrow line, you know. But they were both replaced, unfortunately, because I think they were doing well. And at least we could see fun on the stories, and we were having great time on going to the pitching on the storyboarding, and so from one week to another, they were gone, you know. And I'm going to share something, is a secret, okay? But
Sure.
one day I received a call and said, Jeffrey wants to meet you tomorrow at the Four Seasons, having in LA, in Beverly Hills, having breakfast. And it's his birthday, by the way. And I went there. Happy birthday, Jeffrey. What do you, 7:00 a.m., you know? Jeffrey always had these very early meetings. I want to propose you to direct El Dorado because, you know, no longer we have Wilfin. And wrong question. You know, I said, you may gain a bad director and lose a very decent character designer, you know. So I wasn't for it, because I always learn in life, you have to be sure, more when you work with these guys in Hollywood, that you can achieve the job and make it at the highest performance, you know. When I saw directors coming and lasting 3 months at DreamWorks, 6 months, 1 year, 1 year and a half. It's incredible what Simon Wells and Steve Hickner and Brenda Chapman did on Prince of Egypt. They stood the entire movie. but the other movies were different. So I knew Jeffrey was the big guy there, and I said, thank Jeffrey for thinking of me, and it's a huge compliment. Probably he thought, oh, you have skills of leadership. Yeah, but doesn't apply to directing. Directing, you have to be a storyteller. You have to know, and thanks God I didn't make the mistake. And he said, okay, the next guy is gonna say yes, he's Vivo. So I have a meeting at 8. So he was having meetings with you got the first shot, you said you don't think you can do it, if you want to do it, it's 24/7. I said, I know, this is what is character design for 24/7 each week, no holidays. And he said, okay, fine. So the moment Vivo was announced 1 week later, obviously he came from France and was offered to direct El Dorado, and he went for it, fine. And I had no problems with him. I don't think he knows I was offered, but anyway, I stood working on the designs, which I enjoy the best. This is what I know how to do best, as my belief. And that's that little secret. It's for you. Probably Jeffrey thought he is a Spanish guy. He's going to do okay. He knows about the history. Anyway, long story short, that happened. And I kept working for more than a year with Vivo. And Don Paul, who was one of the top guys on special effects on Prince of Egypt, and that came from Disney, wonderful guy, sweet guy, that these two guys replaced Don Paul, and Vivo Bergeron replaced David Silverman and Will Finn, on the film. So we work, Nico, myself, Tony, Ciruno, and myself for at least 2 years and a half. And it was fun. It was fun, because after Prince of Egypt, I went and I helped on Ants for a while, and jumping on El Dorado, it was refreshing, because the other one was going to be a spirit. And a spirit was hard. It was extremely hard, as I told you in the first interview. So that's the story. Then I remember from day one, Nico, Tony, and I put in these big lineups with lots of characters, the Mayans and the Spaniards, making these wonderful lineups full of hundreds of characters, and presenting it to both directors, David and Will. And they were good people to work, because they were responding from day one to that very comic strip kind of style, I would say European kind of, and that was really beneficial for the movie. We were not involved on storyboarding, but we suggested some names like the Altivo, the horse, because Altivo on the first script was called Lucero. And Lucero was a singer in South America. And I said, by the way, you did put Lucero for this singer, correct? And they said, no, it has nothing to do. Just the writers put Lucero, something that shines. Lucero is something that shines. And then Bonnie Radford, which was one of the producers with Brooke Breton, said, Carlos, do you have any ideas? I said, well, do you want this character to be kind of the Cortez horse, to be kind of stood, that thinks he knows everything? Put him Altivo. He's kind of high, a bit snobby, So they said, oh, Altivo is nice. So we'll go with that Altivo. So despite we suggested some things, the characters got better and better in animation, because then we had these great animators from Prince of Egypt, like Christophe Serran, William Salazar, Rodolphe Guénodin, Fabio Lignini, all these great people that came from Amblimation, like me and Nico. And then we had the other ones with Duncan Marjoribanks, James Baxter, Kathy Zielinski, all these supervisors from Disney, So, and more animators that they joined, like Pres Romanillos that came from Disney, that just had worked on Mulan and Tarzan with Glenn. So we got all these great people that they wanted to do cartoons. that they were a bit beat up from the Prince of Egypt, style. So I think the joy of these people are making amazing pencil tests at the very beginning, just testing the characters. It got us that ramp up to say, oh, those characters, they can really be funny and work with Kenneth Branagh voice and Kevin Kline, And in fact, the animation, it's beautiful in some parts of majority on the majority of the movie. But then the art direction was amazing because we had Paul Lassagne, Ramon Zivak, we had Vicky Jensen, which later directed Shrek too, I believe. We had Christian Schellewald, the German guy, who is a great art director. We had all these great Wendell Lube work as well. We had these 6 or 7 mega talent. That's why the backgrounds of El Dorado are amazing, mostly in South America or Central America, but then the Spanish part too, the sequence with the bull and all that. So we had all this great stuff. And then we needed some extra character designs that Patrick Maté, the French character designer, helped us out. We knew Patrick from Balto, and We Are Back, from the films done in Amblin, so it was a good body. So we asked him I did a version of the bull, but he designed the final bull, because things were going fast, because Jeffrey really wanted El Dorado, the sooner the better, on the theaters, because the fast track lane started really fast, mid 1998, So I don't know if it's any interesting what they're saying. But
one of the things. No, this is fantastic. I appreciate you sharing that. Can you hear me?
Sure.
Okay. I found, okay, so this is just me speculating, and I could be dead wrong. So I remember this when this happened, and I had forgotten about it. Recently, I saw Atlantis, The Lost Empire, Disney's Atlantis. And I think it came around the same time as Road to El Dorado.
They were around that time.
Yeah. And I found, I don't know, was it coincident or what? The second act, like the second half of the movie, I should say, where you meet these characters, like a different world, and they consider you God, and all that. I found that somewhat similarities in both. But having said that, other than that, everything else was totally different. And one of the things I loved about Road to El Dorado, like I said, and I think you kind of pointed out, were the backgrounds, were the character design, despite the fact that the audience wasn't being found and all that, but it was just very, very, like you said, cartoony. And I'm a huge fan of traditional animation, and I miss it. I really, really miss it. The way it was done in Prince of Egypt and Lion King and all that. But Hans Zimmer's score, there's a specific track which I don't remember. It just has an amazing rhythm and tune to it. I thought really was phenomenal, and it's not something that's talked about.
Yeah, it's beautiful. That's not that soundtrack. It's with some drums, little and guitar. It's a beautiful. You mean Atlantis, or you mean Kingdom of the Sun?
Kingdom of the Sun. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Yes,
because Atlantis was the other one designed by John Pomeroy. Yeah, it was.
Yes.
Yeah, no, I got it as the Kingdom of the Sun. Yeah, Kingdom of the Sun. They were the Incans, and we were doing the Mayan. Listen, I don't know what happened, but we always were competing with Disney, with Shark Tale, and then Nemo, and then Bugs Life, and Ants, and you should have a conversation with Jeffrey Katzenberg and not me, because we were always doing that something that someone was doing, I don't know who was first or second taking the decision, but it's something that I hate, because you have so many subjects to work on. I hate when companies are doing the same kind of subject. But yeah, the Road of El Dorado, the backgrounds are beautiful. One of the most beautiful backgrounds I ever worked with, and background artists, And then secondly, the character matches the backgrounds perfectly. It was all
Yes.
cartoony, all exaggerated on the same way. So the bond of working with Christian Shelowal and Ramon Zivak and Paul Azine and all these people were very big because we admire each other. I admire all these guys. Nico too admire these guys, and I admire Nico, and I think he has same feelings versus me. So we are still very strong friends. So and then Tony matched the style too perfectly. But those background artists and art directors and production designers, they were listening, which is very rare because they always want to do what they think is best. But they were listening to us too, and we were listening to them. So it was an orchestra playing beautifully. And Hans Zimmer was at the studio once a month. Hans Zimmer always had that studio in Santa Monica, which I visited a few times. But Hans used to come to the DreamWorks lot and work with us in the studio, you know. And this film, El Dorado, really started, the seed of El Dorado started at the very small studio in Lakeside when Barhan in LA finished the first studio where we started working, where we almost did the entire Prince of Egypt. So then we moved into Glendale, the big studio that was under construction. But basically, we started on really very close to Amblin Entertainment, the Steven Spielberg studio in Lakeside, you know, really close to the Universal lot, you know, rather than, and then obviously animation and everything. Animation testing was done on that studio. And then we moved into the big studio, the current studio of DreamWorks now, that what it has been for the last 20 years, 22 years, 23 years. But the first year and 2 years, I should say 24 years ago or 23 years ago, we started on the old studio where the Prince of Egypt happened. So anyway, long story short, it's a beautiful movie just to look at, you know? And then one thing is for sure, we didn't want to make caricatures of the Mayas. We wanted to take all the Mayan art as we did on Prince of Egypt and take the characters from there, from the pottery of the Mayas, from the paintings in the walls of the Mayas, from the carving, from the sculptures from the Mayas. And the background artists did the same with the cenotes, with the pyramids, with the backgrounds, with the jungle. We were really close to what it was. And with the Spaniards, I did the same. I kind of got information from Seville, where they had all the archives from the Conquista years, you know, and I went there and I took information of all books, how those Spanish Armada were dressing the soldiers and everything to make it caricature, but real, you know? I think when you have great reference, always works better. Then at that time, we had two people, Kelly Kimball, the daughter of Ward Kimball, the great animator, one of the 9 old men, that was supplying with drawings and pictures of the time, Inca, Maya, pre-Columbian stuff, and Spanish time. And we had Haniel Masri, this Egyptian guy who was doing sketches too of costumes from the Inca time, or Maya time, and Spaniard time. So we had these two sources that they were giving us, or buying books, or looking on the internet, printing things. Hey, Carlos, you may like this thing. Oh, I didn't know about this one. Is a kind of a illustration of Cortés, Hernan Cortés, you know, from the time, you know, and I didn't have that one. So they were supplying with vital information, both of them, and both worked on El Dorado, and they worked on Prince of Egypt, and both worked on, I think, on Shrek and Spirit too. So DreamWorks at the time was supplying to their artists with the best assets, you know.
Right.
Right now is rush, and best assets, warranties, at least a faithful movie, you know, that what you are seeing, it's real, you know, that at least it reminds that period, and that's basic for me.
And it does remind you of that period. I mean, it did obviously, we haven't been in that period, but from the books and all that stuff, it does look very realistic. I wanted to ask you about, character design. Um, were Kenneth Branagh and Kevin, so basically a character design, especially the facial, is supposed to match the voice and voice actor to a certain extent. Like there needs to be some sort of feature and then similarities. Were Kenneth Branagh and Kevin Kline attached from the very beginning, or were there any other iterations of the character designs based on other voice actors?
At the beginning, we had a list where Kenneth Branagh and Kevin Kline were on the list, but for Tulio, we had Antonio Banderas too. And it didn't happen because Antonio was working already on Puss in Boots for Shrek, okay?
Mm.
So, but we had Antonio for Tulio. And if you check, Tulio looks closer to Antonio than Kevin Kline, kind of, now that you
Maybe,
know.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
But then Antonio signed for Antonio Banderas came a couple of times to the studio, and we thought it was going to be for El Dorado, but then Jeffrey convinced him to put the voice on the cat on Puss in Boots, because Jeffrey Katzenberg thought El Zorro at the time did great, and Antonio would be wonderful with Puss in Boots, with the sword. So and then Jeffrey didn't want to mix same voices for similar movies or that they will come more or less at the
Mhm.
same time. He wanted always new actors. So they said Antonio's not going to do it. He's already doing Shrek. Oh, we've been working with pictures of Antonio for Tulio. And then Kevin Kline and Kenneth Branagh came to the studio. Sometimes, many times at that time, like with Prince of Egypt, we will meet the actors. Character designers, art directors, and directors, of course. The actors will come to the studio, and Jeffrey Mosley or Steven Spielberg will come and knock at the doors and introduce the actors to us. And sometimes we will show what was going to happen. I remember Michelle Pfeiffer on Sephora, that I was working on Sephora for Prince of Egypt, and Michelle came like out of the blue with Katzenberg behind, and I remember Catherine Zeta-Jones on Sinbad, and I remember Ralph Fiennes on Prince of Egypt, and Val Kilmer, Danny Glover. I remember many actors coming to the studio. So at that time, they will come, and once they had signed already, or they are interested on, Jeffrey will introduce the actors as, hey guys, finally we have this guy or this lady, and will be introduced to us, which was great because that never happened in Amblimation in London, for the 5 years I worked there. Obviously, LA is where you have the biggest concentration of actors. So, but anyway, I thought it was great. And I'm going to answer to your question. Yes, we had a list where we had Antonio, Kevin Kline, Kenneth Branagh, J. Lo for Shell that finally did not accept it. I saw J. Lo at the studio. I one day coming into the elevator, it comes this sassy woman, and it was J. Lo, and I knew that she was going to be talking for El Dorado, but it finally didn't go through. So many times probably they don't. It's a deal that doesn't go through, or it's something that they don't want to do animation. I don't know. It's but usually when we had the final actor or actress, they will come and shake hands and be interested on what's the process. They've been 3 or 4 people that they had been very interested in spending more than half an hour on seeing art direction and character design and seeing the development. Many of them, they have an artist inside, you know, so they want to know more.
Right. I'll say three things. Number one, I do think, well, Kevin Kline and Kenneth Branagh's chemistry was great, but now that you mentioned Antonio Banderas and J. Lo as a possibility, that would have been even more interesting. Now, having said that, El Dorado you guys are working on in late 90s. It
Mhm.
came out in 2000. The first Shrek didn't come out until 2001, and
Yeah.
Shrek 2 came out in 2004, and Puss in Boots was in Shrek 2. So were they already working on Shrek 2
Yeah, they
when you
were.
guys were working on?
Yeah, it was a cut from early version on Shrek 1, that I saw the model.
Oh,
I
so the
don't know
cat
if
was okay. So put okay.
so. Um, Antonio was an option too for Sinbad, but it didn't go through, too. So Antonio had a great relation with Jeffrey Katzenberg. Antonio is a very genuine guy. He's one of the actors. It's not because he's Spanish. I don't care, but he's a very genuine guy, apart from
Yeah.
a great actor. His problem is to be a Spaniard, Spanish, because he always gets into that slot of, you know, Mexico, Italy. You know what I'm saying? He's like
Yeah.
Penelope
He
Cruz. But by the accent, it's like me, I cannot play an English guy. It's
I
we
think
have
for
such a,
for me, sorry, go on.
no, we have such a hard accent, harsh, very Spaniard, that we cannot play another thing, So please go ahead.
It's it's true, and for me, Antonio Banderas, like we know as Mask of Zorro and Puss in Boots, but for me, the way he says in Desperado, I think it was Robert Rodriguez film,
Yeah, Desperado,
he
yeah.
says he says let's play, right?
Yeah.
Like that line is and he has this accent that's not funny, but it is funny, but it
Yeah.
is serious. It's just the way he delivers these lines.
Hmm.
And in Moscow Zorro, he was pretty, more of a serious character with just a little bit of comical relief jokes here and there. But yeah, he's phenomenal. And I mean, Puss in Boots, I cannot imagine anyone else. Just like Shrek is Mike Myers, and
Hmm.
um, there's just certain characters that you bring another dimension of life to them that nobody else possibly can.
Yeah, yeah. It's like Eddie Murphy with the donkey, you know what I'm
Yeah,
saying? It has
exactly.
another dimension. Those guys are who they are because there is something behind inside. So it's like they just nail it. So it doesn't get better. They're above they're above everyone when they do one of the things. This is like seeing playing Michael Jordan. LeBron James,
Yeah.
yeah, is very good, but Michael is Michael
Michael's
Jordan.
Michael.
You know, so
Abs
so so when you I went to some auditions with Bobby De Niro, Eddie Murphy. Even if I didn't work on Shrek, I was going to work on Shrek, and I did not. I saw Antonio Banderas. I saw Helen Mirren, impressive. Danny Glover on Prince of Egypt, impressive. Helen
mm,
Mirren play the
the
I think,
mother.
yeah, the mother. You have it. It was impressive,
Yeah.
I tell you. Then I heard some others like Catherine Zeta-Jones and Cameron Diaz. Yeah, they're good, but you hear some that you really say, wow, these guys are there for something. You know what I'm saying? And they just have it. Some of these guys, they have a special gift. And we thought was going to be Antonio, and then at the end of the day was Kevin Kline. But it's true, the chemistry between both, it worked well.
Mm.
I had worked before with Kenneth Branagh on a short film called The Periwig Maker that was nominated for the Academy Awards. I think it was on the year 2000 too. And it was a stop motion. And the guy is very gentle, Kenneth. And then in El Dorado was the second time. Um, it was good. We met them both, and we had a good time. And they were very pleased to see what we were doing, what Tony, Nico, and I were working on. And actually, we did not had a big struggle on character design on El Dorado, believe it. It
Mhm.
went quite smooth. It's true that Jeffrey Katzenberg liked it more realistic movies. It's true. More realistic style. It's true. Jeffrey always had responded more to realism to caricature. But hey, Jeffrey did Aladdin too at Disney, and Beauty and the Beast. So caricature movies, So, but but probably on El Dorado we got the right combination. Uh, the comic strip style caricature, and then the story a bit more adult. This is what
Hmm.
Jeffrey somehow actually pulled the strings and directed El Dorado. If you go to the credits of El Dorado, it says on directors, it says and Jeffrey Katzenberg, but not mentioned. You know what I'm saying? So bear in mind
Yeah,
that
and
this was his second, third movie. He was very attached to everything was happening at DreamWorks. He was very attached until his 12th, 13th movie. So, so is the character who he is. That's why DreamWorks became what it was.
yeah, no, Jeffrey has this ability to, yeah, again, it's going back to what you were saying about certain actors. They just
Mm,
have it in them. Jeffrey may not be like, a director or voice director or anything like that, even though yes, you're right, on IMDb, he's given uncredit credit. But he has this ability with people, and that's why he was able to attract such big names, which at the time was unheard of because, anytime you would see Beauty and the Beast or Aladdin, Aladdin was Robin Williams, probably one big
yeah,
name. That's about
yeah.
it. And Lion King, James Earl Jones, and
Mhm.
then Jeremy Irons. And obviously he was involved in that too. But after that, like celebrities now, I mean, I'm 100% sure if J Lo at the time of that age in this era, she
Mhm.
probably would have said yes to Road to El Dorado, even if it didn't have much
I believe
budget.
it. I believe it.
Because it's everybody now wants to be part of animation, right? Like it's
Yeah,
just a
it's
different
true.
world.
It's true. Um, I always been very close to Katzenberg. It's true. He respect me a lot, and I respect him a lot. And he knew. It's not. I'm not saying it by saying, you know. And
Hmm.
he probably is the a unique guy that can bring anyone to the studio to see what he's working on. If they sign or not, that's another story. It will depend from taste, lawyers, money, you know. But Jeffrey could
Yeah.
bring anyone to the studio from the other side of the planet, right on, you know, with a call. And that's something that few people can do, you know. And he had actually a way of treating these people like in a way that they were calm and relaxed when they came, and or at least they play that they Jeffrey makes them feel comfortable on this situation. And Jeffrey Katzenberg is a sharing guy. So he brought these guys, and we were very young fellas there working on our third or fourth movie, and introduced it to us like, you know, um, I remember working on Speed, he came with Kirk Douglas, Spartacus, you know,
Hmm.
Kirk Douglas, no Michael. And Jeffrey was making a tour for Kirk Douglas, so he could bring anyone. Brought Bobby De Niro to the sets, Eddie Murphy on track, Cameron Diaz. So anyone could. Obviously, Spielberg was there once a month, but that was his company too, so that's normal, okay? But Jeffrey could bring anyone to see the studio and meet the artist. That's something phenomenal.
Yeah, no, he certainly was, or it still is, but he's completely out of the Hollywood world for now. Um, and he's doing all these things now in Silicon Valley. He started another company again, able to
Yeah,
attract
yeah, with
opportunities, right?
yeah,
Wonder Co. I think it's called Wonder Co. If I'm not mistaken.
yeah. He's
Um,
doing all these things. I think it's a great loss for animation that Jeffrey isn't there.
I couldn't agree more, and I think it's not just a great loss for animation. I think it's a great loss for storytelling because before animation, he used to head Paramount in the 80s, and if you
Mhm.
look at the films that came out in the 80s from Paramount,
They were
I
good.
mean,
Yeah, I have the
like
the
Top
Paramount channel,
Top
and I still
Gun,
see them. You
yeah,
know,
Top Gun, Beverly
yeah.
Hills Cop,
A Pretty Woman, no, I
um,
think no, that's a Paramount one.
Yeah, he was involved in Pretty Woman. Yes, he was
Both.
involved in Pretty Woman.
Both.
Disney, I think Pretty Woman was Touchstone, which was Disney. But he
Yeah,
was involved
Jackson
with
when he
Disney at the
went to
time in the
Disney. Yeah,
90s. Yeah.
yeah,
Yes, yes.
yeah.
But yeah, no, so let me just kind of wrap this up, Carlos. When the film came out, when you saw the finished film or when it came out and the way it was received, your attachment to an animation film as a character designer is a little bit different than a director would be or a producer and a music composer. What was your feeling after you saw it as an audience, as well as the way it was received?
Okay. Um, I was working, I remember, on Madagascar and some spirit artwork. Um, when designers were 2 years into the making, and then we finish character design, we jump into another movie, and then the film it still gets 1 year and a half or 2 years more to get made, you know.
Mm.
So, or a year, depending when we leave. We leave when they don't need us. And if they need any character, they call us and we are on another movie and we made it as a courtesy because we care about the movie we were before. When I saw El Dorado, I had a good time, but I am always very critical with my work and the final movie. Somehow I get very disappointed with with every movie I work on the way it could. Okay, here is the deal. When you work on a movie and you have 3 or 4 great writers and the script has 2, 3, 4 drafts and it has great ingredients, you always think they're going to get all the best ingredients and make that movie. And it's not. It's a consensus. It's a decision between 3 or 4 directors and Katzenberg and storyboard people. And sometimes it's really difficult to make something very unique, just the
Mm.
capacity of a few directors can do that, and not all. So one of the problems at that time is that they were getting bits and pieces that they were very funny independently, but then when they got together, the spine of the movie didn't have A, B, and C, So I thought it had some great ups and downs, honestly. On El Dorado, I thought it could get better on the story too, And when I saw it, it could go better on my characters too. But this is what it was, But I always have that critique look, which helps me to keep improving things, or at least moving forward on a positive way, demanding way. When I saw El Dorado, I would say music was 10, number 10, visuals, they were number 9 or 8.5. Backgrounds were 10. Our characters was 8.5. The gags were good. The running in Spain is great with the bull and trying to get these 2 idiots, Tulio and Miguel. Then it gets a bit slow during the trip on the sea, Uh, then arriving to the promised land, it's wonderful, and then it gets slow. It gets a bit dispersed with Sekal Khan on all his madness, and to me, it could get better. On story, probably I will say it was an 8. It could get 2 points more to be a 10, It didn't reach
Yeah.
the level of Aladdin, being a comedy, too. So I thought when you work on a movie like Jeffrey Katzenberg and many of the animators, we had Duncan Marjorie, we had Kathy Zielinski who worked on Aladdin too. We had James Baxter. And when you have that extra power, plus the guys from DreamWorks and then Jeffrey Katzenberg, you think he did Aladdin, he's going to make something superior, And when you see that we didn't achieve that, sorry, I'm a perfectionist. I don't
Mm.
want to lose never. I want to keep making things better. Then you wonder, and if you lost your time during 2 years and a half. But this is my honest opinion. That's just that
Yeah, no, I
sticks.
I appreciate that, and I think one of the things that has happened, and now it's even more than, I think it started off in the 90s,
Mm.
and especially between DreamWorks and Disney, we kind of touched upon that. there's always this now, even now, like, like you have to release the date. Like every movie has a certain release date because not because you've planned towards or because that's what you want to do, because it has to come out in a certain year to please the shareholders and
Exactly.
the money. And that I think has really put down the core element of every film, animation or live action, which is story, right? And like Ridley Scott, for example, I was just watching an interview of Russell Crowe recently, Gladiator, which is like one of the most amazing films ever made. Um, because it's Ridley Scott, he can probably do this, but not everybody. They didn't have a finished script. They kept changing things
Mm,
as they were going along.
mm,
Now, if it was not Ridley Scott, if it was somebody else, possibly may not have happened, right? So story is the most core thing. You have to have that ready and complete, and
mm,
then you go. And I think with Road to El Dorado, possibly, I'm speculating. I have no proof of this. The idea of catching up, competing with Disney, and making sure it's released on time. Uh, because at DreamWorks Animation wasn't public at the time. I think that's probably went against it. I'm guessing, but who
yeah.
knows?
I truly agree with what you say, because one of the problems at that time is that we had the release date. Once the film was greenlight, we had the release date because that slot was reserved for DreamWorks movies, because
Mm,
everyone in Hollywood is trying to find out when the other ones are having the release dates to find out their best weekend, sometimes with three
yeah,
days a holiday, Anyway, um, many of our films, we had the release date when they were green lighted without having the story close, So it means
yeah,
that everyone was competing against that deadline, and sometimes things are not coming right, you know. What you said with Ridley Scott, yes, it happened with Ridley Scott. It may happen with John Lasseter. It may happen with a few more, but not many. I would say 4 or 5 directors. Steven Soderbergh, um, Tarantino, but no more, So,
yeah,
so that's hard. That's hard, to fight that deadline. I just seen some movies that they postponed it because they were so behind. So
yeah.
they push it, but because they were so behind, they couldn't achieve anything. Not even the story, not even the animation finish, not everything. But to postpone a screening theatrical release, and it's something impossible sometimes, But yeah, so and then the other director that can work with time is Brad Bird on The Incredibles, So 5, 6 directors can do that, not more in Hollywood.
Mm.
Tim can do that.
Yeah,
Tim,
and
but
yeah, and it's funny you mentioned about the release date because now one of the movies that got postponed, Pixar was supposed to come out this year. Elio,
yeah,
it's about,
yes,
I think it was supposed to come out this year
I
because they
think it
start
got
promoting it.
postponed.
Yeah, next year, which is weird because they actually even had the trailer that came out. Yeah, normally they postpone it once they haven't released any footage. It's probably like
Yeah,
just character design.
yeah, yeah.
Um, yeah, but yeah, no, this has been great, Carlos. Thank you so much. I really, really appreciate your time. I always have a great time chatting with you, and it's just love. I enjoy listening to your stories, and you just, go and start telling me all these wonderful things that I probably didn't anticipate, which is awesome. Would love continue talking to you down the road whenever you have time about other projects. It's always a pleasure.
Thank you for your interest, Jawad, and I appreciate you're interested on all these things and your audience too. So thank you. It's a pleasure. So see you next time. Thank you.